We now have the pleasure of presenting MapsPeople, a SaaS company within indoor mapping and navigation, represented by the new CEO, Morten Brøgger, and Chairman, Lars Brammer. Again, I'll remind the audience that you can ask your questions in the comment box below, and then I will take them in the end in the Q&A session. And for that, I will just hand over the word to you, Morten and Lars.
Perfect. Thank you, Kasper. So we're going to show a presentation. I actually can't see it.
Okay, just push the start presentation if you...
Yeah.
I guess there's a button right there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a static slide. Can we go to page 1, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. There we go. Now it works. Thank you. Sorry for that, everybody. So I'm going to give you a short introduction to MapsPeople, what we do and what we are helping our customers with. And then I'm going to give a short update on our performance here at the end of Q3 as reported to the market. Right. So very short introduction to everyone about the company. We provide maps for the indoor space. I'll get back to that later. We currently have more than 1,000, some of them very large enterprise customers. You'll see some nice logos a little bit later. We are in 5 offices in Denmark, 2 in Denmark, 1 in Germany, 1 in Austin, Texas, in America. And we just started earlier this year an office in APAC as well to help us generate more growth in the future in that region as well. We have a lot of years of experience building maps on top of Google technology. And I think right now there is more than 20 nationalities in the company. So even though we are a Danish company with a headquarter in Sundby, Aalborg in Denmark, we are actually a very international company in all our offices. If you want to take the next slide, please. Perfect. So just a quick introduction to the business. There's fundamentally three revenue streams in the business. One is what we call Google Maps platform. That is actually MapsPeople advising large enterprises who procure the Google Maps licenses from Google on how to deploy them the most efficient way. And that also means that they buy the licenses from us, and we have a margin on that. We actually only on that business include our gross margin from that business in our ARR and not the pass-through license cost to Google, which is significantly, but that's not reported on numbers. On the other subscription, on the other hand side, we do have a small Danish public customer who for many years has depending on maps, which has been made and maintained and updated by MapsPeople as well. And in the middle, we have what is fundamentally the current and expected future growth driver of this business, which is our Maps Indoor platform, where we are actually based on CAD drawings given to us by our customers. We're actually transforming them into a real map so that you can use it to find a way, you can use it to book a desk, and a lot of other stuff. And you can say that probabilistically said, we actually help digitizing the built world around here as well. If you want to take us to the next slide, please, Mia. Perfect. So this is really reporting on Maps Indoor, and this is some of the contracted ARR we've had. I'll get back to that more details a little bit later. But you'll see on the right-hand side, we're working in a set of verticals. I'm going to go through some of the trends because we see 2 different trends right now. So we do a lot of business in corporate offices where we're helping large enterprises actually map their different offices so people can find a way, people can book a meeting table, people can book a parking slot, and a lot of other stuff. We work in the sports and entertainment industry. I can say myself living in California was actually MapsPeople who helped making the SoFi Stadium where the Super Bowl was played earlier this year. And you can see a lot of other very large sports brands that uses us to basically map their facilities as well. We work in the healthcare sector. We work in the educational sector. We work in the transportation sector. Airports are the predominant, I would say, industry in there. We work quite a bit also in conventions, large conventions where you need to be able to find your way out. You need to be able to see who is there. And we work to some extent also in the retail sector. So you see there's a whole new trend that is going on here. And I would say a lot of what we're doing is like in the beginning of a new industry that is rising up. It's fundamentally changing how you interact with where you are, whether you're in a similar way as if you were outdoor, you can actually now do this indoor. And that is actually being brought into how you work to a large extent. Me, if you want to take the next slide. This is just very short about how does it work, because it sounds simple. We just make a map and then you go forward. It's actually slightly more technical and complicated in real time. In the bottom today, we actually use the Google Maps technology, which is why we're a Google partner in this stuff. On top of that, we actually draw all the floor plans of a building that we get from our customer or the customer of our partner. And on top of that, we basically put a lot of grids in terms of the network, so you can help that to find a way. You can put statics point of interest in, so you know, here's a big fountain or indoor fountain or a big painting. And on top of that, we or the customers themselves can actually put a lot of dynamic integrations in there. So you have a whole content management system. So you can put different things in. Imagine a stadium. It's not the same place. You have a hot dog stand all the time that can actually be moved around. It's very simple to basically layer that on top of the application. And in the top level, we actually also have a lot of what is called like dictionaries. So if you're searching for hot dog, it may show you the closest burger bar as well. Like it translated into food. Or if you search on a Budweiser, it tells you where to buy beer. So we actually have that in our content management system as well, just as a good example. Now, a lot of that and a lot of these industries work in a different way, and the use cases and the business rationale are slightly different. So me, if you want to take us to the next slide, I'll try and go through this, some of the trends that we see going on right now. We say that our value proposition is kind of like split into two purposes. On the left-hand side, you have get more done in less space, which fundamentally says, let's utilize the real estate that we have in the most efficient way. And on the right-hand side, we have earn more per square foot or square meters that you have. And clearly retail, convention centers, sport, entertainment, airports, a lot of that is actually on the right-hand side, where you basically, you need to be able to catch your audience, you need to be able to catch your customers, and efficiently make sure that they can find the right places to spend their money, if I may be populistic like that one. On the left-hand side, in the top, we actually have something which we call smart office. And there's a lot of smart stuff going in here. And that is fundamentally because we are in the beginning of a new wave where the way we work, whether we're in the office, whether we're in the factory, whether we park our car at the office or someone else's office, that's changing quite a bit. And this is actually where we are seeing quite a bit of momentum. And if I should explain one of them with just a little bit more details, it would be like the smart office. And smart office comes a little bit based on the back of what we call future of work. We all understand the future of work accelerated overnight with the COVID. And now that we're out of the pandemic, people are slowly getting back to work. But let's just face it, the majority of the office workers around the world are not spending 5 days a week in the office anymore. It is somewhat less. It can be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. And that is a trend that we don't think is changing. And a lot of very large businesses is actually understanding this to a much higher extent as well. And we also understand fully that if you only spend 2 days in an office and maybe 1 day is in this office and 1 day is in another office, you don't necessarily need to have a permanent desk or a permanent office, right? You actually have to shop around. You book an office or you book a desk for where you are there, just like you book a meeting room, and you'd like to book a meeting room which is close to the office you booked for that day. If you're in conference calls and stuff like that. And by doing that, you need to basically extend the booking experience. How do you actually book a desk? So you need to understand where's my co-workers, which desks is available, and you do that in a much smarter way when it's a graphical interface instead of just a long list of desk number 11, 21, 2 or B or whatever it's called. So we actually produce a map, a little bit as you can see the little drawing here. And then people can see, well, if I'm going to this building and I need to book a desk, then I'd like to be here. And by the way, I can coordinate with that with some of my colleagues. That makes it fairly smart, but it actually also allows the enterprise to understand what is the need I actually have for desks, what is the need I have for meeting rooms, and they can understand what is the peak requirement for how many desks do we need and how many meetings room do we need. And if you have more real estate, more desks, more meeting rooms than you actually need, which is the case for a lot of companies out there, some of that may be reinforced by a recession coming in or economic downturn, whatever we choose to name it. It actually allows you to say, I have too many square feet, too many square meters, I have too many desks, I can actually reduce that. And we know from some of the case studies with large customers that every time you can reduce a desk that you don't really need, it's between $550 and $1,200 a month that you save. So you can understand if you're a very large company with tens and thousands of desks, just being able to optimize that with 10% is actually significant savings going forward. And this is one of the places where we're seeing quite a hike in the interest to understand how do we do this different? Because it's what you and me and most of the people we know we want. We are not spending 5 days in the office. And clearly the financial officer says, why am I paying for stuff that we don't use? How can I very simply make a business case to reduce some of these costs? And it's some of the same stuff that we're doing on the parking side. Some of the same stuff we're doing with what we call smart factories, where you have a digital twin, you can see what's going on, you can optimize all that. And that's kind of a very new use case in a whole new industry that is topping up, where we are super proud to be the leader in that industry. And clearly that thing, we see a good trend, and we see that coming out of the pandemic and even going into what I would call a challenging economical global situation. We have a very strong value proposition where we can point to where we can help our customers or the customers of our partners to optimize their business in sustainable cost advantages. If you want to take us to the next slide, please. And the next again, please. Perfect. This is the latest numbers on how you will see the growth from our company. You'll see at the bottom we have these maps we make for one of the government agencies in Denmark who depends heavily on maps. We've had that for many, many years. It's a fairly constant business. And you see the slightly lighter green on top is the contribution margin that we recognize as revenue from reselling the Google Maps licenses. And on top of that, you have the light green color and the light green bars, which is fundamentally our Maps indoor business, where you can see a very positive high growth development in our contracted ARR, which will then turn into high growth for our business as well. Let's look at the next slide, please. This comes in that we have this contracted ARR of around just short of 60 million at the end of Q3, and we do expect growth going forward as well. We had more than 60% growth in our total ARR for the combined business year over year, and we had just below 100% growth year over year in our ARR coming from the Maps indoor product. So you can see that the Maps indoor product is fundamentally driving a lot of the growth. And we also in Q3 had a net retention rate compared to last year of almost 120%, which means the customers we have are growing nicely. And that means that the customer base we have will continue to grow a significant amount, will continue to contribute a significant amount to our growth. And if you will take the next page, please. This to me is also a super interesting slide. Here you'll see some of the cohorts on when we got the customers on board. The darker the color on the bars, the older they are. But you'll fundamentally see that the cohorts of customers continue to grow year over year. So you see here in a different view that net retention rate that I explained about the last page is actually super important. So when we grab new customers, when our partners grab new customers, you'll continue to see a growth from these customers going forward. It looks optically on the right that some of the cohorts are reducing. I understand, but that's because the bars on the right is only for 9 months, not 12 months. So we have to take that into consideration. So we do expect to see some nice growth in the cohorts here as well. Perfect. And then I think the last one I have today is it's pretty nice to be a relatively new employee in a relatively small, high growth Danish SaaS company, and then being able to show people like you and even my mother some of these nice logos with the companies that we work on. I think when you look at such nice logos and such large enterprises working with a company like MapsPeople, you also understand that the value proposition actually makes a ton of sense. And I am very confident that we will continue to add equally recognizable, impressive logos in the coming quarters. So that was me speed talking through who we are, what we do, and why in particular some of the new stuff that we're doing is going to be very interesting in the coming years.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Should we start with the questions or?
Yes, please.
Perfect. Maybe we should go back to the one with the logos, because we have a question here outside from asking, are you exposed to large and end clients and industries which are being affected by the current uncertainties? And in that relation, there's also a question here about the stickiness of your solutions.
Yeah.
So of course we can see these logos, big companies, but can you tell us about the stickiness of your solutions and also maybe in terms of the resilience of the solutions?
Yeah, I think specifically where we see some of the high growth, I think the fact that we have a net retention rate of 119% is actually a very good indication that this is sticking, right? Because people who doesn't like your solution, they will not continue to grow it and buy more from you. Like I always say, if the customers are buying more from you, it's a very good indication that they're going to renew the contract. So we have a less than 10% churn in our business, which was also reported on Q3 reporting on a year-to-date basis. I believe it's 6% year-to-date in the last reporting. To the other questions about the logos, are we feeling any resilience? I think it's the reason why I spoke a lot about the corporate office, the smart office, smart building, smart parking, is because we actually see an increase in the demand here. And the rationale for that, we believe, is because we actually help these customers deliver sustainable cost advantages. And if I should elaborate a little bit on that one, is like, I think most of us who's been working with SaaS on the investor side, analytical side, or running businesses, we understand in the last many years, companies has invested predominantly in things that could accelerate the growth. I think it is very fair to say that companies now are shifting quite a bit of their investments into what delivers sustainable cost reductions or productivity increases, right? Which means that, like we spoke about with the smart office, and we can tell the stories in some of the other smart solutions that is out there, both by ourselves, directly with the customers, but also through our very impressive partner channel distribution capabilities, is that it is actually a very solid business case that we're delivering. And over and above that, some of the customers are also using this to come into the whole ESG reporting, because how are we going to reduce our carbon footprint? And one of the things is, if you have a skyscraper on Wall Street in New York, and we do have customers in that particular area, and you say, like, listen, you book a table, but on floors number 9 through 11, you can only book until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. After 4 o'clock, we switch off the lights, we switch off the heating or the air conditioning, depending on what time of year it is. Then you actually can measure how much do you reduce your carbon footprint with. Over and above, you can also say, overall, we can reduce the number of square meters and floors that we have in our real estate portfolio. So it contributes on both of them. And on this part, the smart office, we see a very increasing demand. But like
and more than concerning smart offices, there's also a question outside about, and I think you have touched upon it, but can you maybe take us a few years back, or maybe Lars can be here also to help, but which structural changes have you seen over the past year? So maybe just before the pandemic, of course, there's been some changes after the pandemic, but also maybe take us a bit before the pandemic, and then looking into the past, maybe 1 year, what have you seen within the smart office segment? Do you still see some big changes, or is it more like a natural development over time?
Yeah, I think the smart office is very, very new. To be very honest, Kasper, it's pretty new. It's something that we started onboarding customers in the last 12 months. We probably started talking to some of them for the last 18 to 24 months, but it's a whole new thing, right? I think no one really understood when did the pandemic end. No one really understood what are the sustainable changes in behavior from employees. Now we're getting to see it, right? And we've all read the stories about large tech companies saying you have to go back to work, and the worker says, no, we won't. And then they come back, okay, you have to come back at least 2 days a week. So these are things that are relatively new. And then when you figure out, okay, there's something here that has changed, that will never be as it was before. Now let's reevaluate this stuff. That's actually relatively new. So to me, this is very, very early market, that the customers we have now are absolutely early adopters. And the ketchup effect, I would not be surprised if we see that in the coming years.
We can see that from the uptake from our partners as well.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. And you also mentioned it here, Morten, but there's another question outside here. There is a big discussion between employers and employees in the United States about returning to office. Do you see this debate somehow affecting the market potential for players in the hybrid office segment? Maybe you can just elaborate more on what you just said.
I cannot see that this has a negative impact on our business, because it fundamentally means you have to redesign how we do things. As I said, people will not have a fixed desk anymore. That's a consequence, right? You cannot, I want my own desk, but I only want to come to the office 1 day a week. It's not how it works. So it will change. I think it's logic to most of us here, right? Especially in these very, very large enterprises that we see a lot of in the US, right? And that means that they have to change this. And these are the first movers out there. There's a whole new industry. We have a strong partner challenge, like very large facility management partners and very niche-oriented, high-tech partners who does this. We have a partner who does corporate parking slots, right? So you have to book a parking slot and you go in, and if you have an EV car, then you book an EV parking slot, and you can even put a sensor on it. And then when your batteries are fully loaded, you are asked to move to another one so someone else can get your charging station. It sounds like super simple, but you need a system to basically run and regulate that. And that's where we are helping facilitate that. So yes, this is something where I expect us to see quite nice growth.
Perfect. And just a final question here, Morten. As you said, customers are now focusing more on cost, and you can basically reduce some cost for them with your solution. But what about you? What is your your focus right now in terms of growth versus profitability?
I would say profitable growth.
Yeah.
Profitable growth. Be ready, be very flexible. Those who has followed understand that MapsPeople has actually delivered quite some nice growth, and our organization has also grown. And right now we're focusing on making sure that everyone is doing well, everyone is trained well, and everyone is delivering at a good productivity level, right? And being successful. But we are ready to be very flexible, depending on how the demand increases. But our pipeline is growing.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think we are running out of time, so I would like to thank you very much for the presentation and also answering all the questions. So thank you very much, Morten and Lars.
Thank you.
Thank you.